Great. And so briefly, before I introduce others, Surgical MedTech Cooperative, we're part of this big body called the National Institute for Health and Social Care Research. And basically what we are there to do is to do the research for the NHS and help to get new technologies and new treatments into the NHS. So we are funded by the Department of Health and Social Care, but our money doesn't come from the NHS pot. They're two distinct pots. So there's one pot of money for NHS, one pot of money for the NHR. And our bit looks predominantly after surgical technologies. And we do cover mainly general surgery, but our main focus is on helping companies develop technologies with patients in mind, because a lot of the times there's technology that's developed that either ends up hurting patients or patients themselves can't use, or it's not really practical. So that is where the patient and public involvement is really important for us, is to make sure that when people come with all these lovely ideas, we try and get the public, patients and the public involved right from the start. You can obviously ask me questions about it as we go along, because I don't want to go into full presentation mode. But I will start on the order of my screen. So the members of our surgical MIC PPI committee, we've got Philip, Becky, Manoj, and Rashmi. So I'll start with you, Philip. If you can just sort of say hello, you know, tell us the experience you have and sort of what people can expect from being a patient or public contributor.
Well, following your lead, Dee, hello. I'm speaking to you from the island of Anglesey, which, as you know, is in the ocean off the coast of Wales and the most northerly town in Wales. I've been involved in PPI for, oh, God knows how long. My hair wasn't grey when I started, so that gives you a clue, doesn't it? I've been involved in funding boards, funding panels, selection committees, clinical trials, you name it, I've been involved in it. And I end up being involved in this lot. And but a lovely lot of people. It's highly interesting, and it's run at a level, I think, where everybody can enjoy taking part and you know, put their opinions in. So that's me.
Thank you, Philip. Becky?
Hi, morning. Can you hear me okay? Because my headset is broken this morning. Hi, I'm Becky. I'm in Norfolk, a very cold, wet Norfolk this morning. I'm an autistic disabled adult and carer for a child with autism. So I represent kind of neurodiverse and disability and carers when I do patient involvement work. I've been doing it for the past 10 years. And now I started off working with steering groups and trial management. So that's how a trial runs. And I've also sat on a number of funding boards with the National Institute of Health Research. More recently, I've become involved with the Our Future Health project, which is a data access project. So they're collecting information from 5 million people across the UK over the next few years to improve healthcare for patients on the NHS. Is that okay?
Yep, thank you, Becky. Manoj?
Morning, everyone. Manoj Mistry, British Indian from Greater Manchester. I'm a carer for my sister who's almost 75, and I've been a family carer for at least 35 years, looking after her and previously my late parents. I ventured into patient public involvement work all by accident. None of this was planned. And I've been doing it 12 years. And Philip, who's on this call, I see as the godfather of PPI work. And Philip has introduced me to a variety of different organizations, including Surgical MedTech, which I'm very grateful for. And I like to think we provide a patient carer family perspective to proceedings, and where research ideas have been brought to us through Surgical MedTech, we've always informed the academics, clinicians, the patient carer perspective, and whatever deficiencies there are in any research proposal or intervention they put in front of us. So I like to think, along with Philip and others, we always bring the patient carer family perspective to proceedings. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Manoj. And last but not least, Rashmi.
Hi, good morning all. Lovely to see, and I recognize a few of the names there on the screen. Lovely to see you guys all. I got involved with the MedTech probably about 9 months, 12 months ago. I am also a carer for a family member. I live in London, Surrey borders, Southeast England. Got involved with the PPI work about 4 years ago. And principally really because I was struggling on my own to just know how best to provide care for my mother. And it was quite a challenge. And I found actually getting involved as a PPI member, I learned so much from the PPI colleagues who were all going through their healthcare issues, and just talking to them of how they were dealing with it, I learned a lot. So I'm forever grateful to all the PPI colleagues who have actually helped me to understand about the healthcare, how best to engage with the clinicians, with the GP practices, with all the other healthcare providers. I first got involved with the Institute, Cicely Saunders Institute in Southeast England, which looks after patients with palliative care needs. But since then, working with the PPI colleagues and PPI members like yourselves, I learned a lot. I have thoroughly enjoyed. It's given me a different perspective of meeting new people, because being a carer, and I'm a full-time carer, you actually lose touch with the outside world. And this is really a way of me to engage with other people, but also to learn. And I think that's what I have found the best sort of value of getting involved as a PPI member. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi. And, before I move on to the others, I think as you can tell from the introductions, we are spread out across the country. You don't have to be in Leeds to get involved in anything we do. I mean, that was certainly the case, I think, before COVID, because everything was face-to-face. But I think with the virtual way of working opening up, I think it's really made it possible for everybody else that's not based within Leeds or didn't find it very easy to travel to Leeds to actually get involved in the work that we do. So I would say ignore the address that we have on our website. It has no bearing whatsoever to what you can get involved in. And as everybody said, this is a really great community. People do share the opportunities. Manoj came to us via Philip. And I think Rashmi as well, you sort of got a recommendation as well that, check out the cooperative. So we're very open, loving, big family of non-academics and non-clinicians, and we help you decode things. What I'll do is I'll move on to the rest of the people on the screen. And basically it's just what, your interest in PPI, what you're hoping to get or what you're willing to learn in future sessions from it, what you're expecting. I think that will help us have a more meaningful discussion of something we can take away by the end of today. So if I start with you, Gifty, seeing as you're first on my screen. So just remember to go close up to your microphone and then we'll be able to hear you properly.
I'm Gifty. I've always worked in the NHS, first as a midwife, then I changed my job. Then I worked with the surgical team, and I've always fascinated with all the gadgets that I see and the gadgets that they did for me too when I was here. And I think I got the name from the Patients Association, which I'm a member. That triggered my that would be nice. So I just went to it. But I'm learning how the hospital works actually. And it's nice to know there are some people extras that will give feedback or whatever to the clinician. That would be good. Yeah. And like shared decisions, I can go now to my GP and my consultant, and I can dialogue with them. Yeah. So that we come to an out, so we have the right outcome for my with me. And I love this word, but I really like this one so that I can get more involved and in research, like Mandy was saying, how to fill in the forms for funding and all that. With my help, I think I'll manage. I'll go in for the next session funding because that's really good money, isn't it?
Yeah.
Money talks.
Yeah, thank you, Gifty, for that. And I think it's important what you mentioned in terms of being able to talk confidently with doctors and people once you know what happens, and just gaining that confidence. That's very important. Kay, we'll come to you next.
Right, I'm Kay, and I'm from Gateshead. I'm retired. I've been retired a number of years, but I did work in mental health social work, and I've been volunteering for. I'm new to this group totally. I've been volunteering for, I can't remember how many years, really years, but I'm part of Voice. I'm part of Health Watch. I get involved with different studies and trials, and I'm just really busy with things like that. And I'm here basically to learn, to see what this is particularly about.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you, Kay. Kathy?
Hello, this is my first time here. I've come here through Voice. I moved up from London to Northumberland just before COVID, and I did some research, discovered that Newcastle's a global leader in aging, which I'm particularly interested in. So I've signed up for, I think I've got 4 on the go, different projects to do with aging at the moment. And then I came across the PPI. My background is, I had a career in public sector policy, strategy, communications, research, regulation, governance, that side of things, including the regulation of healthcare professionals. So I came across PPI in my career, realized the value of it. So now I'm interested in actually participating in it and contributing from that perspective. So I look forward to hearing more about it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, your name says fire, so I don't know whether you're joining on a fire device or your name actually is fire. You're on mute.
Is that me you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's you.
Right.
It says fire. So.
Is that what it's got? But apologies, I tried to get in on my own computer and I couldn't get in, so I've come in on my husband's, and I'm aware I suddenly haven't got my name there. My name's Anne. Hi. And I'm from Northumberland. I was 41 years a nurse in the NHS. I started in the late 60s when NHS was just really, just 20 years in, so it was very much in its infancy, 20 years going. And it was very much just experiential learning at the time. And things were passed on verbally to, from nurse to nurse. So it wasn't really till, as the 70s moved on, that research actually started to document evidence, as it was called. We didn't have all the language then. We were a lot of us on the wards, but doing our best. And I mean, I've seen enormous changes. I've been retired from a long time now, over 12 years or more from the NHS. And I only found out about these forums a year ago now. I mean, I just didn't know they existed. So I'm a member of Voice, like Kay was saying. And I suppose for me, I'm coming in with past experience. I worked in mental health as well as physical health. I've worked in lots of areas in the NHS throughout my career, but I'm coming in as well from about my perspective, about me as a person that's entering her 70s. So it's about older age as well, and obviously people around me as well, an experience I had about looking after my parents. But I'm still very new to all this. I'm also involved with a couple of projects. So for me, it's to sort of learn more, I suppose, to see what I've got to offer, because I sometimes don't realise what I have got to offer, because this is a very new environment for me. But obviously I've got quite a bit because I've been through so many changes. I am aware now, I suppose, just briefly, just that, 40 odd years on in my career, where there was supposed to be a utopia, there seems to be much more social deprivation in a way, and problems. I think we thought at the very beginning in the 60s that everything was going to be wonderful 40 years on or more, the NHS starting and social care, everything was going to be wonderful, but it seems as if more things have come along. So I suppose for me, just to be useful and share my knowledge, but also to feel I'm making some difference, it's good to know at my age. So thank you very much for being part of you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Anne, for that. And I think that's one of the things we're hoping to cover once we get through the introduction, is actually what can people offer, to research. Because I think quite often, especially if you're new, there's a lot of terminology around, and it's like, what is that? And if you ever sit in a room for the first time, I mean, at least you've had nursing background, but for most of us, if you don't have the clinical language and you don't have the academic language, it can be a bit daunting and actually quite intimidating when people are just saying all these fancy words and you just don't know what they mean. So our PPI members, I think when we get into the discussion bit, I think they'll also be able to sort of shed some light on how they've dealt with that and also what they've been able to contribute to it. So thank you for that. Hamid? You're on mute, just in case you're talking, Hamid. Oh, might have stepped away for a bit. Okay, we'll go to.
Hello,
Oh no,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Hamid Khan, and I'm really pleased to be here. And basically, I'm an ex-services of mental health services, care for my mom, and I've worked in health and social care in the voluntary sector, so I've got some insight. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Camille. I hope I've said that correctly.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kamil, and I recognize quite a few names. We travel in the same circles. I'm a patient with a number of long-term conditions. I'm based in Stafford, but I'm originally from Poland. I've been involved in PPI since mid-2018. And I'm always looking for new opportunities to contribute and learn as well. I especially enjoy writing dissemination texts and giving presentations. But always open to learn new things, to hear what other people have to say, to consider a new perspective.
Thank you very much, Camille. So I think the way we work it out now is basically it's going to be more or less an open discussion around the topic that you've all obviously signed up for today, which is research protocols. And basically what we're going to be looking at is what is a research protocol, what function does it serve, and basically how can you contribute to it. So I mean, I will open it up to our PPI members, and then they can take the lead. But in short, as a basic introduction to the research protocol, when companies or anyone, they develop either a new treatment or a new technology, the development work is quite intensive. We also get involved in that, but the research protocol usually doesn't feature in that side of things. It usually comes when you now need to run a clinical trial or a clinical evaluation, which is where we actually work out whether something works compared to what the standard of care is. And the research protocol itself is basically like it's a manual to say this is how you should test whether this technology works, and these are the types of people that we want to test it on. And the purpose of it really is just to standardize the results and to make sure that if you were to run a clinical trial across 10 centers, you don't have one center doing extremely badly or extremely well because someone's decided they're going to do something differently. So the research protocol just helps to basically standardize results in the same way that all cars have got the same functions. So, a brake light is always red, for instance, so that no one confuses it with anything. That's similar to what a research protocol does. So we obviously get a lot of those for technology side of things. And I think one of the things for new members is obviously what can you offer, you know, to it. You know, it seems like everybody's written whatever it is that they need to do. Where do I input? You know, what will people listen to my input? So what I'll do is, if you've got any questions, by the way, please raise your hand. Or feel free to use the chat function, which is somewhere at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to those. But if I can ask our current PPI committee members, you know, if someone wants to start us off in terms of, you know, for them, the research protocol, you know, if there's an example, and actually, or you can also start off with, you know, what you can offer and what are the challenges or what are the things people can expect from that. So yes, Manoj.
So I've read numerous research protocols, particularly academics putting forward research proposals for various grant applications, etc., at the University of Manchester. They tend to follow a standard format, and they're written in such a way they often contain lots of unnecessary legal and corporate governance material and bump, which I often say is, who's going to read this? Who is the audience? Why not split the document into two parts, the core essential information and then the supplementary information? So for me, that's the starting point. Who is the audience for this protocol? And does it have to be such a lengthy technical documentation with lots of legal jargon in it?
And I think the point about the legal bit is very important, because really they are written to absolve people of a lot of things. But Becky, yes?
Yeah, we're fighting over who to go next, I think. I think for me, I forgot to say earlier that my background is in scientific research. So I'm a trained scientist and I used to work for Cancer Research UK. But due to long-term health problems, I became involved in patient involvement. So I do a lot of protocol reading and editing of documents, and I sit on a number of grant funding committees. And I think for me, it's the language that's used in them. I'm a great fan of the plain English summary, so I spend way too much time and I'm asked to rewrite plain English summaries for people. So that means that I write it from the scientific text and all the medical terms that are in it. I try and remove those and make sure that actually my children can understand them, because the average reading age in the UK is only 9. And I'm trying to describe a whole clinical trial in maybe 300 words and make sure that people understand the benefit to patients, why the research has been done, why it's important, how patients are involved in the research, and what the benefit is for the NHS as well. I come across a number of applications that I've actually sent straight back, and this isn't to do with the Leeds MedTech, this is other organisations where the language has been so complicated that as a scientist I haven't understood them. So I think it's really important to try and stick to simple, easy to understand language.
Yes, thank you. Rashmi?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the problem comes with the protocol because everyone does the protocol in different style and for different purposes. And I think, you know, all of you, Manoj and Becky, you sort of touched on of needing to keep it small, short, succinct, and simple. And it's absolutely right. I think the problem comes with the researchers when they try to develop a protocol, which is one single document, which can be used by everyone. And what I mean by everyone is when they can use the same protocol to form a contract agreement between them and their partners, whoever the partners are, with the funders, with the sponsors of the document, of what they are planning to do. Now, protocols are used for multiple purposes. It has to be informative, and it has to be, it is all to do with assurance and governance. It has to be applicable to the same standards. When it's used for funders or when it's used for clinical partners and academics, they have to make sure that all their partners are doing the same thing. So one organization isn't doing one thing and another organization is doing another thing. So that's what the protocol is. I have come across, which they're using. And then there is another element of the protocol, which is really how they're going to engage with the patient. Now, that's the bit which is relevant for us as a PPI members, that we need to be able to understand what are they planning to do, how they're planning to do it, what burden is it going to have on us, and how is our data, our contribution in there, our participation in there going to be managed? Is there a assurance process, a governance process that you can actually escalate if you need to make a complaint about something? Then you can make sure there is some accountability, that one person is responsible for managing the health and care needs of yourself. So I think the problem comes with all of us when we see different protocols. They are used for different purposes. And when everything is combined into one document, which is easier for researchers and academics and the clinicians, so that everyone is complying to the same procedure, it's good for them, but it's not so good for us as patients, because we then will get confused with too many jargons, too much information. Because I've come across protocols which are probably 10 or 12 pages long, and then I've come across protocols which are 120 pages long. So I think that's where my experience has been with the protocol.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rashmi. And before I go to manage, I think Becky's also raised a point that's on the same vein, in that in turn, when protocols are developed, for example, in the United States, and they want to come and test something in the United Kingdom, the differences are extremely vast, and expectations as well can be very, very different. We had a protocol from Germany or France, and they wanted patients to spend 14 days in hospital, and that's just not the way the NHS, 14 days is taking up significant amount of real estate in the NHS. There's just no way the hospital will allow it. So we'll come back to that point. But Manoj?
Yeah, just touching upon that, put my hand down. Just touching upon that point, V, I forget the gentleman's second name, but Hanif, the PPI manager at Leeds Teaching Hospital, I think it was about 3 months ago, he held a physical and online workshop to look at a protocol developed by an American company that wanted to run a trial with Leeds Teaching Hospital, your hospital. And the original document itself, which they asked us to review, was at least 16 to 18 pages, completely riddled with technical and legal terms. So first thing I said was, who is the audience? The average person on the streets of Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, London, who you're asking to participate in any trial, will not even attempt to read this document or even understand it. So focus on the audience and try to write it in plain English so that the audience can actually understand the document. So that was my key message. We don't want 16 to 18 pages of technical legal bump.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good point as well. Yeah, a lot of it is really technical. And I know a few members of our group recently reviewed a very highly technical, and it's slightly different funding application, but the amount of technical words and complexities in there was basically enough for anyone to lie in a dark room for the next month. It was technical. So these are some of the challenges you might get when you come across a research protocol, and it's your job as a contributor to decode that and turn it into plain English, which sounds easier than it is in practice. Yes, Manoj, quickly.
Quick point to finish on. I think with the American protocols, they throw in everything under the kitchen sink. Every eventuality they throw in. So the documents tend to be huge. They're overcautious, I think, the American protocols.
Yeah, no, definitely. Philip?
Yeah, can I just say, Manoj, that was absolutely superb, the explanation you gave in terms of protocols, and especially the American ones. And I was just thinking to myself how well I've taught you. The one thing I do want to say about protocols, one thing that I've never been good at school was maths, statistics, and so forth. A lot of these protocols and clinical trials you'll come across will have loads of statistical methodologies and things like that. One thing, a story absolutely true, was I read one protocol. I hadn't got a clue what the person who wrote the bit on statistics was actually trying to get over. I didn't understand it. So I wrote to her and asked if she had time, if there was a lay terminology she could explain this methodology of statistics that she was going to use. She wrote back to everybody on the thing that was on the list there and explained what she was doing. I then got 2 other emails from other clinicians who were professors or whatever, said, I'm glad you mentioned that for that, because I didn't understand either. So in effect, we played a genuine purpose there. And if you like, I always think our role is to answer silly questions and the clinician's role is to put them into sense. So never be feared about asking a question. Doesn't matter how silly you think it is, ask the question if you don't understand. But there is a little sort of guideline to that. Don't hold up meetings and things like that by going on and on and on asking for explanations every 5 seconds about this, that terminology and so forth. Gauge your questions. It doesn't matter if they're silly, and ask them. Okay, that's advice from me.
Now that's very sound advice, Philip, in terms of, gauging when you can ask your questions. I mean, good practice from a team would be to send you the documents beforehand, so you don't see them for the first time at the actual meeting. And then that gives you enough time to actually say, I really don't understand any of this. And I think if you get cold feet, it's okay to actually go back to the team and say, I'm really not understanding what's going on. If there's a good research team, they will actually take the time out to explain things beforehand and to make you feel welcome. But just to touch on just a couple of points that were raised. So the statistics, that's a very good point, Philip, as well. I think maths is scary for a lot of people, especially when it's got weird looking symbols that go beyond the normal 4 that we were taught in primary school. And, and I think for some clinical trial statisticians, they're actually very happy to talk to you and explain. And in the past, they actually used to hold sessions for public contributors where they actually then go through statistics and actually this is what people are looking for. And if you're a patient or public member, these are the things that you need. These are the numbers that you need to look for. This is the trend that you need to look at. So if anyone feels that they could benefit from sort of training in statistics, that is something that you can request from us. And we can ask somebody to put that on for you. So that's not an issue. So if you think you need some training or you need to understand something in a bit more depth, then definitely that is something you can come to us with, if that makes the job easier to review the research protocols. And another thing just on inclusiveness in terms of patients and looking at the research protocols as well, it's about, have they included the right population? So for instance, Becky here, she's neurodivergent, sorry. And, there's certain communication styles that work better. There's certain things, the way information, is presented works better, but sometimes some clinical trial protocols actually exclude a whole group of the population from the evaluation. So these things actually then don't work in practice if some of these things are approved. So those are some of the things as well to highlight from that research protocol. So if I go back to the comments in the chat, Philip.
Nearly got me down being muted. I was just going to add that it depends on what role you're playing when you're actually reviewing a protocol, because you could be looking at that protocol for a funding application. You could be looking at it because it's being funded and you're now sitting on the trial development group. Or It's been funded, the trial development group have met, etc. And you're now looking at it as part of the trial steering committee. So there are various areas that you could be sitting on where you're actually going to look at that. Now, apart from the funding proposal, where you'll be on your own looking at it, in the clear light of day, the other two, invariably, you'll have a PPI colleague on the panel with you. Maybe you know them or you don't know them, but you will be introduced to them and you'll have their email. Nothing wrong whatsoever. Because if you think your question is too silly, ask your other PPI colleague. They might agree with you, in which case you can both put in a request for an explanation. So don't feel you're on your own all the time. There's always somebody there. The dodgy thing is that I'm always happy to help people. But again, you've got to respect that you will be signing a confidentiality document for that protocol, for that particular clinical trial. So you can't share it with just anybody. You can only share it with other people involved, if you like. So that's something going on. Thing about this job is you're there as a member of the public. So you're not expected to be, if you like, knowledgeable about anatomy, physiology, statistics, etc. You're there to put your view as a member of the public and your knowledge as a member of the public and your knowledge and experience of hospitals and so forth, and how you'd like to be treated if you like, if you're in hospital and so forth.
Thanks, Philip. Becky?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to kind of add on to Philip's comments and say that I, as a patient reviewer of protocols as well, that it's okay not to be an expert in every subject. My background is in kind of child health, autism and learning disabilities. And I find it really hard to review applications that are in mental health that have loads of statistics and things in them. So it's fine not to be an expert in everything. You can still give an opinion, which is perfectly valid. And actually, sometimes it is the questions which feel silly or daft that actually kind of do, I know what I want to say, identify the problems and issues with the project, because it's something that everybody is kind of overlooked in the background. So silly questions are very valid questions.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. No such thing as a silly question. And Rashmi, I mean, you've put in a good point, and as in we should not confuse research protocols with patient information sheets. They tend to come together. So I think it's already been highlighted, you know, the research protocol is like the instruction manual, but the patient information sheet is basically when they're approaching patients to take part, this is the information a patient needs to know. And that's what they need to have. And you might be asked to comment on either one or both of those documents, but they tend to be companion documents. Yes, Anne?
I was just interested to hear when you were saying about language. And obviously after 20 odd years, I went into mental health. And it was at the time when mental health was changing and they were now saying basically everything they'd done in the past was wrong and they were going to put everybody out in the community. So, you know, if you came up with a better idea than what they had, it was great. But the language, I just felt I was in a foreign land. I couldn't believe it after 20 odd years of nursing. And it always stuck with me was when I went into the training, I was told it was going to be a free-flowing curriculum. And I was obviously older than a lot of the other students that were going in for post-reg training. And for a while, I never dared ask, what does that mean? But eventually I sort of asked one of the other students, I said, what on earth is free-flowing curriculum? She said, it's basically do-it-yourself training, Anne. I thought, and that was actually how the course was. It was mostly sort of politics and sociology. But after that, I would write down any word that I didn't understand, because in mental health, the language was unbelievable. You know, it was, if it could make some sort of enormous word for something that was very basic. But it just was a sort of eye-opener. I'm finding that after 20 odd years of nursing and coming across obviously a lot of medical words, how on earth is the general public, or actually, you know, the residents and the clients thinking about this? But yes, free-flowing curriculum, do-it-yourself training. So it's just, and that's kept with me now to keep it simple, as what, you know, Philip was saying, because later on when I went back into general nursing, when we were doing care plans. I thought, this is something that's got to be simple for a patient to understand, because it's their plan. And it has to be short, maybe on one sheet of paper. And diagrams were very good, I think. And I do that still now, if I can put it in when you were saying, what's the problem, you know, what's the outcome and how you do it. But to do it in a diagram, because that's actually something visual I found. So I tend to interpret a lot of things like that. But yeah, language. I think litigation is a big thing as well, from what I was talking about. At the end of my career, I had to have litigation insurance. And I never thought that would ever happen when I started off. But from starting in the 60s, where everybody was grateful for the NHS, we've gone a long way to where people, like in hotels, think if you can get a bit of money off at the end of your stay, you'll bring out, you know, what you can find as a problem. And that seems to be a big thing now. And I think that's what's causing, I think, a lot of people in health, whatever, look at whether they should be there, because it's, which America is very well advanced on. But everything they do is thinking about litigation, every step they do in anything in their practice.
Yeah.
So it's just to share that with you.
No, thank you, Anne. And yeah, as I think as a couple have mentioned, you know, that litigation is crept into the research protocols, where a lot of the language around that is really to do with, we don't want you to sue us or try and get money out of something possibly going wrong. And then I think it goes back to, well, how clearly have you communicated what you're going to do with the patients? I think all of that ties hand in hand. And Becky also mentioned, you know, the preference for visual sort of information. And I know the experimenting with using videos, for example, and virtual reality, you know, for consenting procedures now in hospitals, because, you know, you quite rightly said some of these words, there's not many people who feel comfortable enough to ask their doctors or their nurses or healthcare professionals, actually, what does this mean? And, you know, sometimes you don't need the long fancy word. There's probably a quicker, shorter way of saying something. Yeah. Anyone else have any comments, questions, want to add to that? So Becky's put in the chat, I'll come to you, Manoj. Yeah, so Becky's put in the chat, over time, you'll also learn what to look for, including reason for doing research, what research has been done, how it's been done. Yeah, so basically it's choosing the projects and the things you get involved in. You know, there's going to be something that's going to be motivating. And I notice there's a few of you from Northumberland, Newcastle area, and aging and frailty is a really, really big thing now. And it's something that's being looked at just across all the sectors. So it's about, you know, figuring out which bit of that research actually is, should I say, more exciting, or where you think you can add more value to that. So yeah, that's a fantastic point. Manoj?
I was going to make a reference to protocols that have been written by university professionals. You often find that the overextensives and the academics you're working with, they're tied by the rules and regulations of the university. They often agree that half of the stuff, including the protocols, is not necessary, and people participating in trials will have difficulty reading the documents. But they do say that their hands are tied. The protocol, this is material, this is sections we have to include. Now, I've had this discussion with academics at Leeds, Manchester University, especially the traditional red bricks. There's all sorts of rules, regulations, and procedures that academics, clinicians, researchers have to follow, and hence you get these very long documents that most people can't understand. So that's where some attention needs to be paid.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth, I think on that note, because yeah, you're absolutely right. Academic protocols tend to be different because they've got their own research ethics committees, which are different to what most people are familiar with, which is the NHS research ethics committees, which most things tend to go through. So yeah, there's sort of serving two masters, so to speak.
Well, can I mention one other point, V? So I'll tell you this in confidence, as long as it's not spread everywhere. So I'm involved with a panel at the Health Research Authority, and they are looking to produce standard documentation for participants in trials, any research that takes place. So they are looking to develop templates which researchers, academics will be encouraged to use in the future. It's not compulsory, but the idea is to minimize documentation to 2 to 3 sheets of A4. So hopefully next year, the new year, templates will be published and pushed forward for academics and clinicians to adhere to if they so wish, but it's not compulsory.
Yeah, it's definitely useful to know. Thank you, Manoj. Have any of the anyone else got any sort of fears? You know, Kathy, Kay, Hamid, Camille, is there anything that you think, well, actually, I'm still not too clear about this, or anything you'd think is a challenge? Yes, Kathy?
Well, I just want to say thank you, because the advice given by everybody is a really good introduction into this. I've always believed very much in PPI, both from my professional experience, but also as a carer and my own health experience. So I see this very much as being on the side of the patient and the public, and empowering people. So, but all this, the advice that has been given has been very much skewed towards that, in terms of simplification. Don't be afraid to ask. That's what patients feel all the time. So we are, in fact, representing their experience by doing this. So thank you, and yeah, I look forward to getting involved in some of the work. Thanks.
No, you're welcome, Kathy. And I think it just goes to say as well that, even if there's any questions that arise, you can always come back to us. We've got people who are non-judgmental, who will definitely,
yeah,
advise and help you out with that.
No, I think
you've got to be alone in it.
No, thank you, V. I mean, that comes across very much in this gathering of people, and through your chairing of this, I can see that it's a supportive environment, and that's very encouraging. Thank you.
Philip?
Yeah, can I also say that you don't need to be frightened of people? I remember once when I was sitting on a funding panel, and it was coffee break and everybody was milling around, had a list of all the attendees, including myself, and I was actually the only PPI person on the list. The rest were all professors or, top surgeons or whatever. And the guy sat opposite me was a professor of geneticism. Is that correct? He was a genetics guy anyway. Yeah. And I thought I was going to talk to him. Anyway, coffee break came along, and he was sat all on his own. So I went over to him and sort of introduced myself. He said, yeah, he says, you must find it very difficult, like me. And I thought, well, how do you find it difficult? He said, I know nothing about surgery. He said, I know nothing about this particular thing. So when we talk at the funding panels about what these hierarchy professors want to do within their clinical trials, I don't know. Because there's none of them talking about genetics. So bear in mind that there are other people around the table, although it might be professors and this and that and the other, they might be as ignorant as you are about some of the things that is being talked about. And in fact, this geneticist was a very good guy. And we met up again at lunchtime and so forth. But again, something you have to be wary of. There is a little bit of a social scene when you're sitting on funding panels and you go for coffee and things like that. You can either stand there like an idiot with a cup of coffee in your hand and talk to nobody, or you can go and join a group and start talking about the weather or whatever. So, but don't be afraid. They're colleagues, they don't know, they might not know each other either. So, just get stuck in and be yourself.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Philip. Yes, Kathy?
Yeah, I think I would echo that. Having had a career working with all kinds of professionals, all kinds of academics, what you realise is, because I've worked across the public sector, you realise that there are many, many people who are experts in small areas of academia or their chosen field, but there is absolutely no one who is an expert in everything. And that's a real leveler. So, you know, that's really important, Philip. And I mean, to be honest, professionals and academics, because they're so deep in their subjects, do tend to sometimes see things through the filter of their particular subject. And they can get lost in that and only, you know, and sort of there's a heavy bias sometimes in not being able to see the world through other lenses. And I do think that the PPI community has an important role to keep that message going in terms of seeing things through as many lenses as possible, because, you know, society and communities and smaller communities like PPI bring so much to the party.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, our clinical director is a colorectal surgeon. He knows nothing about pancreatic surgery as well. You know, you'd think cutting up different body parts would be sort of similar.
Yeah,
but he would be in the dark absolutely about any other sort of surgical area. And it goes back to the point that Becky's made in the chat about, you know, it's about concentrating on the parts that are, first of all, interesting to you and the parts that you feel you can actually contribute to, you know. So, you know, you heard Philip talking about funding. He does get involved in a lot of funding. You know, if you want to understand how funding decisions are made, you know, then there's opportunities to get involved in that. You know, sometimes people are interested because they've got a background in medicine or academics. They might be a bit more interested in the academic or scientific rationale for that particular research protocol. So I think it's about, you know, you can test the waters, you can try different bits that you can get involved in and then just make up your mind. So we do have some people that only get involved in funding applications, for example. They're not interested in the research protocol. And then you've got people who just want to do the research protocol because they want to make sure things are tested in the right way. Or it might be that particular treatment or technology is something that's close either to them or to a family member. So yeah, it's, you know, test the waters. At the surgical make, we always, I mean, we have registered on the voice platform, so we are sort of part of the wider voice thing. But you can register to us. We always send out opportunities, random opportunities for people. It's not it's a take it or leave it. You don't have to do any of those. But, you know, it's just useful to be a fly on the wall sometimes, you know, to see, you know, what are people talking about? How are decisions being made? And, you know, obviously now the drive is for more diversity and inclusivity of just different patient types within research. So that's another thing that's filtering into research protocols now is, you know, I know in the past it was normal to say we're only looking for native English speakers for a research protocol because you want them to complete a questionnaire. That was normal, and research ethics committees approved those research studies. You know, so now obviously the focus is, well, what are the reasons why you can't include non-English speakers? Is there another way to get around that? So it's those types of things that, you know, if it's a community you feel is underserved, then that your voice can actually make a difference to that. And Becky's put in, if you don't understand the document, you know, do say it, because you might not be the only person not understanding the document. And I think, Anne, you said something similar, you know, sort of alluded to something similar. Your chances are you're not the only one who doesn't understand the terminology in there. Yes, Manoj?
A quick point, when these academics, clinicians, company directors, whoever write these protocols, they write it from their perspective in terms of what they're interested in, but it'd be vastly helpful for everyone, for patient care, family members involved at that stage in helping to write and co-produce that research protocol in the first place.
Yeah, definitely do it from the start is what we're trying to instill now for most companies, because that's what we tend to deal a lot with. we used to work with one, in my previous life, we worked with one pharmaceutical company, and they were quite good at doing that from the beginning, and they carried it all through the end. So that's another thing to note, is how are patients going to be informed of the study results? Because most of the time, the research protocol's written, a clinical trial's done, and
Yeah.
and that's a big problem globally, not just in the United Kingdom, actually. But there's one company that was very good at that. And they, after the study, and they've got the results cleared, they would actually invite all the patients that took part. They used to book a nice little hotel, give them some food, do a presentation, and then they would actually break down the individual results for the patients. If it was anonymized, then they would actually break it down, and they would have individual one-to-one sessions, so they could actually understand how their body reacted to something. And that was, at that time, that was considered groundbreaking, but it still hasn't filtered in. So that's another point, I think, as patient and public contributors, that you can make sure is included. And they need to be held to account. People need to know what those results are. And Becky's also put, we need to realize that many researchers don't know how to involve or work with patients. That is absolutely true. And it can be awkward first encounters with those that aren't familiar with how to work with patients. But that's something I think you also need to be prepared for, is they're probably as terrified as you are of them. So that's why in Philip's sort of wise words, there's no silly questions at all. Any other comments, questions? No? Really happy.
Thank you.
Can I have a practical scenario how you do this protocol? Say if I say, okay, I'm involved in the protocol, how exactly does it say? Before COVID, we used to attend meetings and all that. I don't know whether it's changed now, and they just give like block things, yes, no, yes, tick, 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 tick. Is that what you do? Or you make comments, or you write comments?
I'll let the others answer that before, and I can rush me.
Just really on to Gifty, your question there. Do not ever feel burdensome. I think, not so sure, one of the persons said, I think it might be Becky, I'm not so sure, that do what you can do. Do not feel that you have to make comments on everything. As we have said, there'll be a lot of people in there. There'll be academics, there'll be clinicians in that meeting, or there might be just different PPI members. Some will be more experienced, some will be less experienced. Do not ever feel that you are a very little person. You are not. You are a very important person, because you have got particular health or care understanding that others may not have. So you are just equally as valuable as anyone. So if you do not understand, I think Philip touched on, if you do not understand something, chances are someone else also doesn't understand. I think it goes back to how either a patient information sheet or a protocol is developed. For which audience? If it is for patients, or is it for the funders? Is it for the sponsors? Is it for the clinical partners who are doing the trials? So there will be different people there with different expertise, and they'll be all looking at it from a different perspective. Your area, and hopefully the PPI coordinator who you will be working with, will help you to say, this is the section, does it make sense to you or not? And if you don't, ask, as simple as that. But never ever feel that you are no one, because all of us have got some experience. We just tend to look down on ourselves. And that's how I learned. I used to be like you. I used to think, I'm just I haven't worked in this in healthcare. I've worked as a volunteer for the last 30 years, and I work with lots of charities and community groups and engage with them and help them out. What am I going to do in the research? I'm not a clinician. I'm not an academic. And now 3 years later, I have learned so much. So, I guarantee you within 6 months, you'll know more than I do.
Yeah, that's usually
Thank
the
you.
case. Thank you, Rashmi. It's usually the case. You end up becoming an expert in a certain field. And, with the research protocols as well, I mean, obviously before COVID, it was easier because you would get in the same room with everybody. So it was easier to ask those questions, but it was also, in a sense, also easier to feel intimidated, as what Rashmi is saying, because you're sitting face to face with the gods of medicine and academia, basically. And I think now, I think the move is to do it via email. I know, Philip, you've done a few research protocol reviews via email. And I think now the move, they sort of give you the research protocol, you read it, and then you have to just, if you've got any comments, any questions, any suggestions, then you just basically respond, and you tell them that. They might suggest, oh, actually, let's have a phone call, and then we can actually work out how this, what you mean by certain things. But that's my understanding of how that's working now, instead of getting people around a table. Personally, I think getting people around the table is better, because you sort of do it and you're done with it at that moment. And I think doing it virtually has got its benefits, because then you don't have to travel to London or wherever to do it. But to Becky's point as well, that she's just put in the chat, you've also got to be careful that PPI doesn't take over your life, because you can fall into the trap of accepting all these research protocols. And they do take time. Some of them, one protocol can take you an entire day to decode. And, sometimes, people will come in, they'll say, well, the deadline's on Friday, and it's an 80-page document. You can say no. I mean, preferably we try and tell them, please don't do that to people. It's not nice. It hasn't taken you 2 days to write 80 pages, so you should have been involving them from the beginning. But I think it's important to set the boundaries for yourself. You might decide, if it's less than a week's notice, I'm not doing it, and that's perfectly fine. No one will sort of think, well, that PPI member is useless. They're not going to think that way. It's just you purely do not have the time, because clinicians and academics are also very good at saying no if they don't have the time to do something.
Yeah.
It's your right to actually say, no, I don't have the time. I'll wait for the next one.
That's a really good point, setting parameters so that you don't feel overwhelmed by it all coming in and pressurizing you. Yeah, absolutely. And I like your point about it didn't take them a day or two to write it, so why should they expect you to read it in a day? So
yeah, exactly. It does take up time. I know managers very, very good at saying, no, thank you, I've got other things I need to do. And that's very good, because then straight away, well, actually, let's see if there's somebody else with capacity.
Vic, on that note, so what happens often reading any documents, academics will sometimes at very short notice send you something and they say, can we have this by Monday? And another annoying thing is they'll put a time limit on it. They'll say, this is 2 hours work. So what I now do with 12 years experience, I'll look at the document, just quickly scan it, and I'll get back to them and say, I can do this document, but it will be Friday the earliest. And then I'll also tell them, this is not 2 hours work, this is 4 hours work. So it's up to them to say yay or nay. If it's going to be 4 hours work and they're only going to pay for 2 hours, well, then I'll decline it. Politely say, sorry, but I'm not doing it. So let's be clear and clarify the situation where they stand, where we stand. But
well, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Managing the expectations. Yeah.
I do find it annoying where an academic clinician will give you a time span. They'll say, this is 2 hours work. It might be 2 hours work for them, but it's 4 hours work for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing to remember with that as well is they don't know how to do PPI. So if you just take their word for it, as Manoj is saying, you know, it might be 2 hours for them, but actually no, I now need to sit there with a dictionary and go through multiple Google searches to understand what they're saying. That's going to take more than 4 hours. So
Yeah,
always have to remind them that
yeah.
you're a subject matter expert, but I am the patient. I'm the person with the lived experience, so I am the lay member. Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, on that, V, is there some standard resource for medical terms that that can be used just to sort of quickly find out what they mean, rather than I really don't want to go into Wikipedia to find these things out. I'd rather go into a proper professional resource. So
yeah, there is. I know there is a research glossary for research protocols. I'll search for it. I know it's somewhere within the NIHR sort of archives, but I'll search for it and then I'll share it out as a link together sort of with the link for the video after this.
thank you.
I'll send that, but then there is a glossary of sort of common terms that are used in a research protocol that does exist.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it was also done by patient and public contributors as well. So it's
No, it just reminded me that I have a medical dictionary that I've had for years, which might now become very useful, but I'm sure it's out of date, and there'll be, you know, some of the terminology is brand new. So
no, and Becky's also posted a link in the chat. So if you open that up before the video closes, then it will save it to you can save it on your browser, but she's also posted a link in there. And she's also put in an experience where she's accepted 3 grant funding applications within the next 2 weeks. So that's basically her life gone for 2 weeks looking at these funding applications. And yeah, she's also bounced back documents because, you know, there's just so many issues. You know, sometimes the document's not saving, there might be formatting issues. It's not your job to sort out that formatting. You know, people should make sure they send stuff to you in a way that makes it easy for you as well. And if you prefer to receive something as a physical document, you know, printed papers, and you don't have printing capacity at home, it's also okay to ask them to send that to you through the post. There is nothing wrong with that. You know, I'm one of those people that prefers to read things on a paper. Things just go into my brain easier from paper than from a screen. So it's okay to also ask for that. Don't feel you are restricted to taking a laptop or an iPad out, because there's some people that just don't have those, so they just prefer to also get that in the post. Okay, so Gifty, has that been answered? Has your original question been answered?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I'm clear now.
Okay, cool. So you might not have any other questions for now, but please feel free to email the Surgical Mech email. I think the one that's been spamming you with the links and stuff for the last couple of days. Feel free to send any questions that you have. We're more than happy to signpost you. If you're looking for some clinical specific information or research information, we can definitely introduce you to other parts of the NIHR that look specifically at that area. But if you've got any other general, you know, PPI related questions, then feel free to just drop us a line, and our friendly PPI members are more than happy to help you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So unless anyone else has got anything, I am happy to let you continue with the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.